energy mix in Kenya, which I think is remarkable because globally, you look at the global sort of energy mix, 30% of the global energy mix is actually renewable energy. So Kenya is ahead of the curve, and that also demonstrates the opportunity that Africa presents around first mover opportunities, but also building the industry of tomorrow and leveraging what has happened in India to maybe help accelerate that on the continent. And then we had another keynote address from Mr. Ravi again, Katisan, and his focus was on jobs and unlocking prosperity, from jobs. And I thought that was very interesting. There's an element of impact, and our impact actually encourages economic participation in the building of new industries, and that was supported further by the conversation with Mr. Raman Roy and Mr. Tommy Davis when they spoke about building the BPO empire and industry. So with that notion of impact being really important, when we ask yourselves to introduce yourselves now to the audience, let's maybe look at it from the perspective that you all have these accolades and you all have these achievements that you've done in business. And everybody in this room has researched that, so they probably know what that is. But let's maybe introduce ourselves by saying, this is the impact that I bring about by what I do. So maybe we can start at the end with Mr. Busisa Moyo, if you're happy with that, to just sort of say, I impact the world in this way through this type of activity, and this is who I am.
Okay, that's not part of what you had sent on the group that we rehearsed. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much. Very glad to be here. It's not my first time in Kenya. I've been here before. I used to do a bit of work in Uganda, but not Kenya. My name is Busisa Moyo. My day job is in the agricultural space. We are edible oils manufacturers. We process soybean. We contract farmers. That's one way in which I impact the world. I want to impact my immediate community for the world. So I start with my immediate, and we produce commodities and household goods. So, as I said, Mr. Vimal Shah is the godfather of the FMCG industry. And when we all grow up, we want to be Bitco. We want to be like Mr. Vimal Shah. I'm also chairman in the public sector of the Zimbabwe Investment and Development Agency, which is the IPA in Zimbabwe, responsible for inward investment into the country. My last way in which I impact the world is I do a lot of business with India. In the agricultural side, our equipment is from India, but we have a mining startup. We export chromium ore and lithium to India, to Pune. We have a counterparty there, and the company is called Ubuntu Lithium Mining. So that's how I impact the world from Zimbabwe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Very good morning.
Love and greetings from the city of Mumbai in India, where I live. I have been, this is the third edition of the India-Africa Summit that I'm attending, and I nudged Paljila that this time we should do it in Kenya, so maybe I can take a little credit for that. And I have been to Kenya many times, and hopefully we will be making some large investments in Kenya in the near future. My father pioneered radio in 1949 and television in 67, and we were the first private sector telecom company in India in 1970 when we brought Ericsson to India and helped build 40% of the mobile infrastructure, besides the landline and the international gateways, etc. And we partnered with Panasonic from Japan. We built 4 joint ventures, beginning with dry cell batteries and electronics, etc. And then I started a solar energy company at village scale, where we have 3 Japanese giants as our partners, and they pushed us that they wanted to become partners. It's the world's largest in solar mini grid space, and we have done some amazing work which I will talk in the later session on sustainability. But at the very core of all my activities, I'm involved with 6 NGOs. I have been the president of 6 chambers of commerce. Is sustainability, climate change, renewable energy, reusability, and social impact. And so all the businesses have been remodeled to ensure that these are being taken care of, and so we can talk about it a little later. Thank you.
Good afternoon, good morning everyone. I'm Rishabh. I head the Trade and Commerce wing at the High Commission, but for this interim period I'm also officiating as the Acting High Commissioner. Instead of talking about myself and what I've done, I'll take these 2 minutes, if you allow me, to expand more on the India story, which was started on by Satya, then followed up by Ravi, and then Raman. So a lot of you here have come in from India, but the other half has not been to India, or they had been to India 15-20 years ago. So I just take a quick 2 minutes to talk a bit about what has happened in India in the last 10 years or so, and I'll be very brief, and I'll just speak with the data and numbers. So as the morning Satya told all of us that we are the 4th largest economy in nominal terms, and we are soon going to become the 3rd largest economy by the turn of this decade. And just to add the caveat of the momentum that we are riding on right now, to add the first trillion, India took 67 years since independence. To add the next trillion, we took 8 years. To add the 3rd trillion, we took 5 years. And to add the 4th trillion, we'll be taking even less than that. So there's this momentum that's continuing right now, and that's why the world is optimistic about the India story. I'll come to FDI. We have close to $930 billion of FDI since independence. Of that, more than 550 billion have been added in the last 10 years. We are annually adding almost $90 billion of FDI. We talk about, there's a big infrastructure transformation that's happening in India, which has been accelerated in the last decade or so. And for those who haven't been to India in the last 10 years, let me just paint a picture. India right now has the 2nd largest road network. We are adding almost 24 or 25 kilometers of highways per day. We are adding 15 kilometers of railway track every day. We are adding 8 airports every year into our country. I'll expand a bit more about the digital transformation which has happened in India, and which has a lot of relevance for not only the rest of the world, but especially Africa and the global south. We have 1.4 billion unique identification cards in India called the Aadhaar. The UPI payment system, which now is known all over the world, it has recently overtaken Visa to become the largest real-time payment settlement system in the world. On a monthly basis, we are doing some 18 billion transactions on the platform. Just to put this in perspective, if you take the next 4 countries in real-time payments, add all of their transactions, add 50% to that, that's where India is right now. So the scale, the impact of the technology that it's creating across India is huge, humongous. I'll just take 1 more minute to speak about what India and Africa are doing, just to lay context for the rest of our conversation and for the next 2 days as well. I'm sure a lot of the thought leaders who have come here from India will be expanding on that. But just to put the relationship in context, there's an annual trade of more than $95 billion. We are nearing around $100 billion of annual trade between India and Africa. India is the 3rd largest trade partner for Africa after EU and China. There's an investment of almost $75 billion that Indian companies and the government have made in the continent of Africa. And almost 20 billion of that has been very recently announced in the last 2 years or so. From the government point of view, since I'm representing the government of India here, in the last 5 years, more than 15,000 youth from Africa have gone to India on scholarships. These are graduate scholarship, postgraduate, PhDs. More than 40,000 Africans have been trained in the last 10 years in India. These are short-term, very focused and targeted technical and vocational trainings. So the point that I'm trying to drive on here is that there's a momentum that this relationship has been carrying for a while now. And it is at this opportunistic time that I like to thank the organizers of the conference that they have chosen Kenya as the place to hold this conference, get all the people from leaders from India and Africa come together at one conference and speak about how do we strengthen this economic relationship. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. So we've had now, and I think that was actually a great context for this panel as well. I saw on Instagram that you specifically were talking about technological collaboration, and you were at that point being very specific around agriculture, right? And I looked at sort of the trade balance in Africa between India and Africa, and for the last few years it's been in favor of India, but there have been seasons where it's actually been in favor for Africa, So in thinking about maybe that specifically, or you can look at other industries as well, or sectors, when you see the opportunity around India and Africa collaborations around technology, what is the lens that you're seeing? Is it that we can take African-born technologies, new biotechnologies around climate-resilient crops and those sort of things, and take that to India? Or is it that we take Indian technologies and increase the African output? So what does that look like to you?
And an interesting question, Thaheer. I believe I'll like to answer it in two parts. There's no either or. There's no one-way traffic here, either from Africa or from India. I would say it's more of a synergistic approach of co-development, and we both have a lot to learn from each other. In the first part, I'd like to talk about what has happened in India's agriculture sector over the last 7 or 8 decades. I firstly like to emphasize upon the impact that the green revolution of the 70s and 80s had in India. In those decades, India was a food deficient country. We had to import grains to feed our own people. Right now, we are a food surplus country. In fact, we are the largest producers of a lot of the agricultural products in the world. From around 20 million tons of rice in the 60s, we are now producing around 130 or 140 million tons of rice. A big revolution has happened in the dairy sector. And I think this is very relevant for Africa as well, because the model of dairy development that we undertook under the White Revolution, which was the model of cooperatives, or as a lot of us here would know, the Amul model, where the farmers were connected to each other, and millions and millions of farmers are connected by these cold chain stores and supply chains that collect milk and take it to us, and one part of the spoke of the hub and spoke model that they created. And now we are the largest milk producer in the world. And this is again, the amounts, the numbers that we speak here are around 240 million tons of milk that we produce in a year. So I believe these are some models that are very easily replicable in Africa, because the context and the circumstance that India and Africa face are similar. We are both developing countries. We are countries which have young populations. We are or have been for most of our history primarily agrarian economies. A very good example for this, which I believe is the aspect of mechanization for small farm holders. For instance, if you look at the very simple example of a tractor, something that's required for every farmer in every farm. The tractors that India builds, the tractors of Mahindra, Sonalika, these 35, 40 horsepower tractors, which are suitable for the land holding sizes of India, are very relevant to the agricultural landscape of Africa, because the land holding size is similar compared to the tractors of Europe or US, which are 200 horsepower, 300 horsepower, which really don't make a lot of intuitive sense for the size of land holding we see in the developing world, in the global south, in India and Africa. One more thing that I think that can cooperate is on the use of digital public infrastructure in agriculture. So I'd like to bring everyone's notice on what has happened in the agri stack of India, where there have been farmer IDs that all farmers have now. Their land parcels are linked to that. What they are growing is connected to that. We are using remote sensing technologies, we are using GPS, we are using very targeted inputs for what is required to be added or removed from the soil to make this crop suitable for the parcel of land you have. So all of these very precise inputs that we are able to give to farmers, that increases the yield. And these are technologies that are very scalable once they are put in place, and then therefore that also brings into loops into the argument of how there's a lot that both of our geographies can learn from each other in cooperating and coordinating in the agricultural sector. I'd like to add one more thing on a lot that we can learn from Africa as well. And there I'd like to focus a bit on the climate resilient varieties and seeds that are present in Africa, which in the context of climate change and reducing the agricultural yields are very relevant for India. One example here, again if I look back into technology, would be, as you mentioned, renewable energy in Kenya. A lot of off-grid renewable energy centers are found across Africa, and India has an expertise in solar pumps. So I believe this is something that can be linked together, solar pumps with the renewable energy expertise that we see in Africa. So I believe there are a lot of areas to cooperate and co-develop. And I believe there's a lot of potential for this relationship to go further. Thank you, Thaheer.
Thank you for that. That was a really comprehensive answer, and I love that you span both like civil infrastructure and digital infrastructure as well, which brings me to a question maybe that I can pose to Mr. Sushil. So you've got an empire that has spanned infrastructure, or career that has spanned infrastructure, telecoms, power generation, consumer electronics, last night we were already speaking avidly about the data center requirements, like what's required from an economic standpoint for those things to make work, and where they would ideally be located on the continent. So like just looking at that digital infrastructure sort of perspective, like what do you think we practically need to do to be able to realize that digital infrastructure opportunity on the continent? And then what is it that India has done in its past that potentially could be adapted to what needs to happen in Africa?
Thank you. I think, to answer that question, we must see some things in context. That we are facing, for the first time in human history, technological, political, social challenges at an unprecedented scale, and all have converged at the same time. In the last 1 year, more than 70% of the world population went to vote. There have been disruptions, new parties, new political alliances, from globalization to now regionalization, and also now move towards nationalization, is completely changing world order, supply chains, manufacturing, trade and logistics, etc. And therefore, whatever Africa intends to do must be cognizant of this new world order that is sought to be created. And I found an acronym that if you have to grow fast, FAST standing for focus, adaptability, scope, scale, size, and technology. If you have to take all this, by focus I mean you don't need to copy the Indian model. You see what are the core competencies of Africa, which is agriculture, mining. You have the highest amount of sunshine in the world, so solar energy should be, in fact, Africa should be leading in solar. But what model of solar one can discuss? For example, I've noted a company called OMC Power, and rather than going for the 1,000 megawatt plants, we set up village scale power plants, meeting the needs of every segment of the village, telecom towers, hospitals, schools, petrol pumps, and laying a smart grid to every home. And what it did was, because there were 40,000 villages in one state alone which still didn't have electricity, despite India being one of the largest producers of solar energy. So the actual beneficiaries of renewable energy had still not seen the light of day. And so rather than seeing multi-billion-dollar valuations, I wanted to see how can we impact the lives of those who live in these villages after 75 years of getting our freedom, that they have not seen light. And the impact, I must tell you, in 12 years, that these villages have turned into mini towns, and the population has grown by more than 10 times. The value of the land has gone up by 10 to 20 times. And when I went to the first village after 10 years, I could not recognize it because it had become a bustling town, which had spawned at least 100 new businesses, small and medium enterprise led, which led to a huge amount of employment. And I think what Africa needs to see is adapt these kind of models, which will spawn a huge number of entrepreneurship at the bottom of the pyramid. If you look at a new policy initiative by Prime Minister Modi, he said that 20 million homes in rural areas should become energy producers rather than energy consumers. And what it will do, in the past, politicians were, to win elections, said, we'll give free electricity to the bottom of the pyramid, free water, but what it is, it's not a sustainable business model. Instead of that, what he said is that 20 million homes, if they put solar energy on their rooftops, we will subsidize more than 80% of the cost. And then for 25 years, they become producers rather than consumers, because the surplus that they will generate, they can supply to the grid. So while we take energy as a big cost, in the future it is conceivable that, like mobile telephony which became free in India, that power also can become free in the near and distant future. So I'm saying that we need to look at policy also in the light of the new technologies that are coming. We talked about AI being a disruptor, and therefore we must factor that in while looking at how we are going to collaborate between India and Africa. And there are so many models. One example I can give you, India has formed the International Biofuel Alliance after forming the International Solar Alliance, which Kenya and other African countries should become signatories to, because then you get a benefit of all the innovation that is taking place not only in India but across the globe. Now, there are very large producers of sugarcane in India, in Africa, and we've already started converting sugarcane bagasse into bioethanol. And the policy of the government to blend at least 20% bioethanol into fuel has now been completed very successfully. So one of the collaborations could be, I know that there are very large sugar factories in India itself, that they convert sugar cane into bioethanol rather than converting it into sugar, and India will happily be willing to sign 20 to 30 year agreements to buy the entire output of bioethanol. And this will create huge amount of employment in the rural parts. Because in India also what has happened is everybody talks about urbanization, but most of the cities, have overgrown their size and they are not being able to manage those cities because of overcrowding, and the whatever infrastructure you build is not adequate enough. Why not create entrepreneurship or bring urban amenities to rural areas? Our President Abdul Kalam had formed this Pura, providing urban amenities to rural areas. How technology can enable this to happen. So today you don't need to be actually in an urban area to be providing technological solutions to the world. One of the NGOs that I'm running is become the largest NGO on agriculture in India. It's relevant for Africa, that's why I'm mentioning it. This area was the poorest area of India, right in the center, and was designated as the suicide capital. The water table was at 600 feet, the rivers had gone dry, and they had inadequate rainfall for 26 out of 30 years. And we decided to take this head on. We revived 3 rivers, we brought up the water table to 40 feet. We planted 50 million fruit trees. And the farmers who were earning 30 to 50,000 shillings, their income went up by 10 to 30 times. And what they did, the multiplier effect, one guy in one village, he was on the verge of committing suicide till he joined our program. He has now built a bungalow for himself. He's bought a Honda car, a tractor and a scooter. But it didn't stop at that. That was the multiplier in the rural economy. We encouraged him that he should now support 100 other villagers in his village to take on the same model, which he has done successfully. So you can see, you help one guy and then there is a multiplier, he goes and benefits another 100 people. Is a model that one should look at in Africa. So what can begin as a social enterprise can also lead to for-profit businesses downstream. Millions of young entrepreneurs, and I can tell you there is no dearth of entrepreneurship in India or in Africa. You provide them with the resources and the ecosystem, and entrepreneurship will succeed. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those wonderful insights. And I love that you also talked about the urban-rural challenge. I love that you also spoke about alternative and biofuels, because both of those things kind of tie into Mr. Busisa Moyo's range of operations, being banker, commodities industrialist, industry association chair, and as well as chair of a sovereign investment promotion agency, right? Also, that context that you mentioned earlier during the introduction, where you already are demonstrating a relationship between Zimbabwe, or an industry in Zimbabwe and India, by bringing in that capital equipment and technology from India to help the operations locally, right? So maybe looking at it, because I know we've been speaking about Africa, but let's zoom in on Zimbabwe for an instance, right? And through what you do, you've got a very interesting view on what's happening in Zimbabwe around trade and investment, right? But when you're looking at the India-Africa corridor, how does your view start to shift? What does it look like? Is it that Zimbabwe has a strong export opportunity to India, or is Zimbabwe an interesting enough first mover investment destination for capital coming from India? What does that relationship actually look like?
Thank you for that question. I think the relationship is growing with India. I can only say that I think there's room to be more assertive about how much investment is coming from India into Zimbabwe. We export into Zambia and into Botswana as well, so very much exposed into those markets. So I think there's a need for India or Indian investors to assert themselves. To give you an example, the FDI, and I need to explain a little bit about that. This is self-declared, so when an investor comes, they declare how much they're going to invest in Zimbabwe for the next 10 years. So it's self-declared. So these numbers are based on self-declared amounts that investors intend to put into projects in Zimbabwe. To give you an example, the Chinese investment projected 2024, 2.4 billion, India, 75 million. And India is number 2, so that's a far second. So you can see the direction that is going, 2.4 billion versus 75 million. I mean, this is chalk and cheese. So I think there's opportunity to grow the relationship. Most of the investments that we're seeing out of India, so I gave you the statistic for 1 year, 75 billion, so it was a low year, 2024. But if you look at investments in the last 3 years, it's a more promising picture, 853 million, close to $1 billion, that went projected to go into projects in Zimbabwe. This is cash, this is machinery, this is raw materials, so all in. So $853 million for 3 years. The majority of that, about 596 million, mining. So Indian companies investing heavily in the mining sector, $500 million plus into the mining sector. Also manufacturing is the next sort of category of investment. And it illustrates, so if we go top down, it illustrates what I say. We're buying equipment out of India because I think one of my colleagues mentioned how India is far more relevant in terms of technology to Africa. If you're buying cooking oil or edible oil crushing equipment, soya crushing, cotton crushing equipment out of Germany or someplace like that, the scale is usually not practical for African markets. So I think there needs to be a bit more intentionality, and thank colleagues like Alginda who are creating these sorts of conversations so that we can be more intentional. So a lot of it is happening because a friend and so on, but I think we need a more structured. And if we structure it better, I think we can see a lot more results, a lot more impact. Our rural areas are still, very much subsistence farming, low mechanization. So opportunities like you mentioned, I say that because we contract smallholder farmers for cotton, 1 hectare, 2 hectare to grow cotton. India's got a lot of experience, but we need to program this more intentionally and import models, import equipment, import and adapt some of the technologies that have been spoken about to really see that impact coming out of the relationship with India. Just touch on the trade side, right? So in terms of trade, again with Zimbabwe, very low. Exports to India about $50 million annually on average for the last 10 years, which is quite low. Imports from India into Zimbabwe, 200 million. So a more promising sort of number, but the bulk of that, 70% of that is pharmaceuticals, not machinery, not stuff in agriculture. So again, these statistics should not be the source of discouragement. I think for me, it's the opportunity. Just like Africa, the challenges in Africa are the opportunity for India to really come in, demonstrate and create value. I heard earlier there's a speaker who said, come and give, but I think Africa doesn't want that. I speak as an African. It's not Thabo Mbeki, I'm an African, but I speak as an African businessman. We want to share, we want to work together, we want to mutually benefit from relationships. We're not looking, I think we're past the point, I think aid has been criticized. We're looking for more commercial interest, commercial alignment, where we have things like shared manufacturing, where we're not exporting raw materials. This is the story of Africa for the last 500 years. Exporting raw materials without much. Africa is still poor, but has created massive resources. I'm sure the story is the same for India as well. But we want to change as African businessmen. We've been to school, I was educated in Europe. A lot of us have been privileged and educated in the States. We want to sit with equals across the table and create a mutually beneficial outcome in enterprise and in commerce. So I don't think we should be looking to give only. I think we should be looking to share. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. So we are literally at the end now, we're out of time. And I think just to wrap up, we're only allowed to do one line. It's going to be a quick line, right? Just to wrap up. Everybody is working on something. Everybody is trying to achieve something. So in one line, very briefly, and we can start from, okay, who wants to start and go first? But just sort of say, what is your invitation? What is your offer? Or what is your ask of the audience? Let's go.
So we have a lot of Indian business entrepreneurs, investors here.
Just one line.
Okay. I'll urge everyone to look into, my jurisdiction is Kenya, so look into Kenya, also Africa with an open mind. And I'll invite you all to reach out to the High Commission if you need any assistance in your business endeavors. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Since he said one line, I'd like to quote from Prime Minister Modi. He said, "This is not an era of conflict and confrontation. This is an era of cooperation." So let's collaborate, let's cooperate, let's share from each other's experiences for a more equitable and just world where it's not one win and everyone else loses. It has to be a win-win situation. We are socially integrated for a long time. You can see Vimal Shah, he might be of Indian origin, but in every aspect he is a African and a Kenyan at heart. And the way he spoke about Kenya and Africa shows, that Indians have the ability to get assimilated within the local populations and then adapt it as their own. Mr. Shah is here, and so many other successful Indian businessmen. But when you talk to them, they say, "I'm Kenyan" or "I'm African." They never say, "I'm Indian." So I think we are a perfect fit for each other, and there is a very good political favor towards it, because Mr. Modi fought day and night to make the African Union as the 21st member of G20, and also these several international alliances which India is forming: International Solar Alliance, Biofuel Alliance, and also Green Hydrogen Alliance. Africa should start integrating with these, because these are the technologies of the future which can impact in a very big. Green mining is coming in, green steel plants are coming in. So these are going to become the big value creators in the future and the differentiator. So moving from raw material supplier to value creators.
Thank you very much for that.
Colleagues, Africa is a young continent, average age 19.8. Come visit Africa, come trade with Africa, come invest in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we have
another round of applause for our panel? Thank you, Thaheer. Thank you, gents. Just quickly, Busisa, just for a quick photo before you get off stage. We have a wonderful surprise for you guys. You came all the way to Kenya to come and show commitment to the future opportunity to be part of to experience Kenya in Nairobi. And Ken Invest responded by participating in enabling it. I'd love to let you know that the government of Kenya has responded as well. I'm very happy and proud.